generating damage the way the gerontologists originally tried to do. Instead, we can fix the damage. We can just go in and periodically repair this damage, eliminate it from the body. If we could do that, then we can leave metabolism alone. We can let metabolism generate damage at the natural rate, which means, of course, that we don't need to understand metabolism any better than we already do. And, moreover, we don't need to understand pathology either. We don't need to worry about how complicated life is late in life, because the fact is we won't let damage accumulate to the level of abundance that causes these pathologies. We will sit in that window of opportunity where the body is set up to tolerate a certain amount of damage. That's all we need to do with the maintenance approach. Sounds spectacularly simple, doesn't it? And actually, to be perfectly honest, it is. Because the fact is we already do that for simple non-living machines. This car, of course, is more than 100 years old. And the reason it's working just as well as it was when it was built, rather than having fallen apart at the age of 10 or 15 the way it was supposed to, is simply because it has been owned by crazy people who do a spectacularly large amount of maintenance on it, a comprehensive job of preventative maintenance that simply removes the damage before anything happens, like the doors falling off. That's all it is. And because aging is a consequence of physics and is fundamentally the same thing in a car as it is in you and me, we should, in principle, be able to do exactly the same thing in the human body. So the question then is, can we in fact do exactly the same thing? And the answer is, it looks as though we probably can, and I'll explain why in a minute. But first of all, I just want to tell you why you hadn't thought of this. The fundamental answer is because since the dawn of civilization, we have been terrified of aging. We have all known that aging is this utterly ghastly thing that is going to happen to all of us if we get away with life for long enough and don't get eaten by tigers or whatever. And at the end of the day, we have to put it out of our minds and get on with our miserably short lives and, make the best of it. And not be preoccupied by this terrible thing. And people have been saying since the dawn of civilization, oh, I know how to fix aging, and they've always been wrong. So if you see someone like myself up here saying that this time it's going to actually happen, clearly you don't want to get your hopes up. You don't want to do that, especially because you have made your peace with aging. So you end up in a position where you make up these stories that try to convince yourself that aging is some kind of blessing in disguise. And this was perfectly rational until people like myself started coming along and explaining how we might actually bring aging under medical control. But now it's a huge part of the problem. It slows us down. It is the fundamental disconnect in healthcare today. Now, I've done a lot of pontificating so far, and I've only got 4 minutes and 11 seconds left, so I'd better talk about some biology, really. The fact is that even though the maintenance approach is vastly more rational and more promising than either the gerontology approach or the geriatrics approach, nevertheless, it's still not very easy. Because, let's face it, the body is a really, really complicated machine, and it accumulates a lot of different types of damage. And we've got to fix them all, just in the same way that a mechanic has to fix all the types of damage of a car in order to keep it on the road. And this is what we have to fix. It turns out that, yes, damage is complicated, but it's not nearly so complicated as you might fear. All of the various types of damage that we have to worry about, these intermediates, if you like, between metabolism and pathology, can be classified into just 7 major categories, which are listed on the left-hand side of this table. Things like cell loss, which is simply the phenomenon of cells dying and not being automatically replaced by the division of other cells. That's all that's cell loss, and of course it causes various aspects of aging, like Parkinson's disease, because of the loss of dopaminergic neurons. And the repair for that, you all know what it is, it's stem cell therapy. That's exactly what stem cell therapy is. Put cells in that have been programmed to know what to do, to divide and differentiate into replacements for the cells that the body is not replacing on its own. The reason why Stone's Research Foundation exists is because the other 6 categories of damage are not nearly so well understood by society at large. And there isn't nearly as much work as there needs to be going on to actually develop the corresponding therapies. But the point is there are corresponding therapies out there. All of the things I'm listing on the right-hand side of this table are within reach. We have made very nice progress. I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. Here we go. This is some of the stuff that we've done over the past few years, really unlocking huge logjams that have existed for more than a decade in the research to actually develop these repair therapies. It's all happening. I'll go back and show you this a little bit. This is a paper from 4 years ago, which is essentially a reinvention of the ideas that I'm putting forward right now and that I first published 15 years ago. And this paper, unlike the work that I originally published, is being actually paid attention to. This has now become an extremely mainstream orthodox idea, so it's not something that you need to think is some kind of heresy anymore. Furthermore, the fact is, this is not about longevity. If you look me up in the media, you will find that I get called the prophet of immortality and things like that. And this is rather distressing, because the fact is, it's a distraction. It stops people from taking this work seriously. So I want you to know that this is just straightforward, down-to-earth medical research. We do not work on immortality. We don't even work on longevity. We just work on health. And the fact is, like any other type of medicine, it will have a side effect, which is people will on average live longer, but that's a good thing, right? The fact is, this will actually cause people to live a lot longer because of the ubiquity of aging. The fact is, people in their 20s and 30s don't have much of a risk of death. The mortality rate in the 20s in the Western world is about 1 in 1,000 or less, which means that if we didn't have any aging at all, then people would live 4-digit lifespans on average. And, that's quite nice to think about. But it's also something you could make lots of science fiction about. And I don't want you to be distracted by that. I want you simply to think about the fact that this is healthcare and that you don't want to get Alzheimer's, and indeed you don't want anyone else to get Alzheimer's, and the way to stop us from getting Alzheimer's is not to treat it as an infectious disease, but rather to treat it as what it is, namely an aspect of aging. I'm going to close by just pointing out that this is coming soon. Maybe not for 20 years, but the widespread understanding that it is coming sooner than that, a lot sooner. Work in the laboratory over the next few years, I believe, has a high probability of being sufficiently successful to get the expert community in general on side with the idea that we can, in fact, bring aging under comprehensive medical control in the foreseeable future. And that's what you guys need to be waiting for. You need to be watching out for the widespread acknowledgement and anticipation that these therapies are coming. At the moment, it's still a relatively minority attitude, at least in terms of what people say in public. People will not, on average, be getting up on stage and saying the kinds of things that I say, but in a few years they will be, and you'd better be ready. I am going to finish just by saying that if you want to know more about the details, about the science underlying this, you should get this book, which I wrote several years ago. People keep saying, please update it, but the fact is it doesn't need much updating, not because there's been